I never planned to uncover my family's darkest secret while spring cleaning. But life has a way of revealing the truth when you least expect it, especially when you have a curious 6-year-old who treats every dusty box like buried treasure. "Mommy, look what I found." Emma's voice echoed from the attic, filled with that unmistakable excitement children get when they discover something new. I was busy sorting through old clothes, preparing for our upcoming move, when she emerged from behind a stack of boxes clutching a worn leather satchel. "What's that, sweetie?" I asked, barely looking up from the pile of clothes I was sorting. "It has Grandma Mary's name on it." She bounced over, dust particles dancing in the afternoon light streaming through the small attic window. "And it's full of letters." That caught my attention. My mother-in-law, Mary, had passed away 3 months ago, and my husband James hadn't been the same since. He'd barely spoken about her death, throwing himself into work and avoiding any conversation about his childhood. When we inherited her house, he insisted on selling it immediately, giving us just 2 weeks to clear out 30 years of memories. The satchel was beautiful despite its age, rich brown leather with Mary's name embossed in fading gold letters. The brass clasp had turned green with time, but it still held firm. "Maybe we should ask Daddy first," I said, reaching for the bag. Emma pulled it closer to her chest. "But Daddy's at work, and look, this one's already open." She pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age, the paper so delicate it seemed to tremble in her small hands. I should have stopped her. I should have taken the satchel and waited for James. But something about the desperate way he'd been avoiding anything connected to his mother made me hesitate. "Okay, just one letter," I conceded, "but then we pack it away for Daddy to look at later." Emma settled into my lap, carefully unfolding the letter dated June 15, 1982. The handwriting was elegant but shaky, as if written by someone trying to hold back tears. "Dearest Mary, I know you'll never forgive me for what I've done. A mother should never have to make this choice. But with Robert gone and the bank threatening foreclosure, I saw no other way. James was always the stronger twin, even in those first precious moments, when the agency said they could only take one. My blood ran cold. Twin? James never mentioned having a twin." I read on, my hands trembling. "Timothy was so small, so fragile. The couple from Boston promised he'd have the best medical care, opportunities we could never provide. I tell myself he's better off, but the sound of his cries as they took him haunts my dreams. James asks for his brother every night. At 4, he's too young to understand why Timothy disappeared. The doctors say children this age won't remember, that James will forget in time. I know you judge me, Mary. You made that clear when you found out. But until you've had to choose between watching both your children starve or saving at least one, you cannot understand. I'm entrusting you with this secret and these letters, the only connection I have left to my Timothy. When James is older, perhaps you can explain." With a broken heart, Helen, James's grandmother. I sat there, stunned, as Emma played with the other letters in the satchel. My mind raced through every conversation with James about his childhood, the way he always changed the subject when family history came up, his inexplicable sadness when watching twins play together, his mother's strange comments at our wedding about James finally having a whole family again. "Mommy, there are lots more." Emma pulled out another letter, this one dated years later. "Can we read them all?" Before I could answer, heavy footsteps creaked on the attic stairs. "Sarah? Emma? Are you up here?" James's voice sent panic through me. I quickly stuffed the letter back into the envelope, but not before Emma called out, "Daddy, we found Grandma's special bag." James appeared in the attic doorway, his work tie loosened, looking exhausted from another long day at the office. But when his eyes landed on the satchel, all color drained from his face. "Where did you find that?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Behind the boxes, Daddy. It has letters from your other." I clapped my hand over Emma's mouth, but it was too late. James staggered back as if physically struck. "Emma, sweetie," I managed to keep my voice steady. "Why don't you go get cleaned up for dinner? You're covered in attic dust." She looked between us, sensing the tension but too young to understand it. After she scampered down the stairs, James remained frozen in the doorway, his eyes fixed on the satchel. "How much did you read?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Just one letter," I admitted. "James, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." He crossed the attic in 3 quick strides and snatched the satchel from my hands. No one was supposed to find these. Mom promised she destroyed them years ago. His hands shook as he clutched the bag to his chest. Why didn't you ever tell me about Timothy? The name hit him like a physical blow. He sank down onto an old trunk, still holding the satchel like a shield. Because I didn't remember him, he whispered. Not really, just feelings. Dreams of someone holding my hand. A shadow always just out of reach. I moved to sit beside him, careful to leave space between us. The letter mentioned you were 4 when my grandmother gave him away. His laugh was bitter. That's what Mom finally told me on her deathbed. She thought I deserved to know the truth before. He swallowed hard. I spent 40 years feeling like part of me was missing, never understanding why. And now, he looked down at the satchel, at decades of secrets held together by worn leather and tarnished brass. There are more letters in here, aren't there? I nodded slowly. It looks like quite a few. James stood abruptly. I need some air. Please don't read any more of them. Not yet. I need time to. He didn't finish the sentence, just turned and fled down the attic stairs. I heard the front door slam moments later, followed by the sound of his car starting. Sitting alone in the dusty attic, surrounded by boxes of his mother's belongings, I realized this was just the beginning. Somewhere in Boston, there might be a man who looked exactly like my husband, who shared his blood, but not his memories. And in that satchel were letters that would either heal 4 decades of hidden wounds or tear our family apart. The sound of Emma playing in her room drifted up through the floorboards, reminding me that some secrets, once revealed, can never be buried again. As the sun set through the attic window, I wondered if James would ever be ready to read the rest of those letters, and if finding his twin would finally make him whole or shatter everything he thought he knew about himself. 3 days passed before James spoke about the letters again. 3 days of tense silence, of him leaving for work before dawn and returning long after Emma was asleep. I kept the satchel where I'd found it, though its presence in the attic felt like a living thing, pulsing with unspoken truths. On the 4th night, I woke to find his side of the bed empty. Following the dim light downstairs, I found him at the kitchen table, the leather satchel open before him. Letters spread out like fallen leaves. I couldn't sleep, he said without looking up. I've been dreaming about him. About Timothy. Memories I didn't even know I had. I pulled out a chair, careful not to disturb the arrangement of letters. Do you want to talk about it? His fingers traced the edge of a photograph I hadn't seen before. 2 identical toddlers in matching overalls, their faces bright with laughter. We were inseparable, according to these letters. Grandmother wrote to Mom every month for years, describing how I kept asking for Timmy, how I wouldn't sleep without 2 of everything, 2 cups, 2 blankets, 2 toys, always saving one for him. Your mother kept all of this from you? James nodded, picking up another letter. She thought she was protecting me. Grandmother made her promise not to tell me unless. His voice caught. Unless Timothy ever came looking for us. Did he? I held my breath, afraid of the answer. Yes. James pushed a more recent letter toward me, dated just 5 years ago. He tried to find us when his adoptive parents died. Came to our old neighborhood asking questions. Mom turned him away, told him he had the wrong family. My heart clenched. Oh, James. She was dying when she told me this part, said she couldn't take the truth to her grave. He laughed bitterly, as if confessing on her deathbed made it better. 43 years of lies, and she thought one moment of honesty would fix everything. I reached for his hand across the scattered letters. What do you want to do? I don't know. He pulled out another photograph, this one of a man who could have been James' reflection. Timothy left his contact information with Mom. She kept it, even though she told him to leave. It's here, in one of these letters. Have you found it? He shook his head. I'm afraid to look too hard. What if he doesn't want to be found now? What if he hates us for what our family did to him? Before I could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. Daddy? Why are you crying? We both turned to find Emma standing there in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. James quickly wiped his eyes, but Emma had already padded over to climb into his lap. Is it because of your brother? She asked, touching one of the photographs. The one from Grandma's letters? James looked at me over her head, panic flickering in his eyes. But Emma continued with that brutal honesty only children possess. I have a brother in my class. His mommy couldn't keep both him and his sister when they were babies, so different families adopted them. But they found each other last year, and now they have two families instead of one. Sometimes the wisdom of children can break through walls adults spend years building. James hugged Emma tighter, his tears falling freely now. Yeah, sweetie, something like that happened with my brother. Can we find him? Emma asked, like Tommy found his sister. James reached for another letter with trembling hands. I don't know if, but Emma had already spotted something in the pile. Look, this one has numbers on it. She pulled out a cream-colored envelope with a phone number and address scrawled across the back in Mary's familiar handwriting. Recent enough to have a cell phone number, current enough to offer hope. James stared at the numbers like they might burn him. I gently took the envelope, memorizing the information before setting it aside. It's late, Emma. Let's get you back to bed, and Daddy and I can talk about this. After tucking Emma in with promises that yes, we would tell her if we found her uncle, I returned to find James still at the kitchen table. But now he was writing, his own letter taking shape under the late-night kitchen lights. I'm going to find him, he said as I sat down. Not just for me, but for Emma. She's right, family isn't about who kept you or who gave you away. It's about who you choose to love. I picked up the photograph of the twin toddlers again, these two innocent boys who had no idea their world was about to split apart. What are you writing? Everything I never got to say. Everything I didn't know I remembered until now. He pushed the paper toward me. Dear Timothy, you tried to find us 5 years ago and our mother turned you away. She's gone now, and with her went decades of secrets. But not all of them stayed buried. I just learned about you, about us, about the choice our grandmother made that split our lives apart. I've spent 43 years feeling like half of me was missing, never understanding why. I have a daughter now, she's 6, and she has your smile, our smile, in those old photographs. She's the one who found the letters, who made me brave enough to write this. I don't know if you still want to know us. I don't know if you've built a life that has no room for long-lost brothers and family secrets. But if you're willing, if you still want to understand where you came from. The letter trailed off there, ink smudged with tears. I don't know how to end it, James admitted. I squeezed his hand. Maybe that's because this isn't an ending. Maybe it's a beginning. He nodded slowly, looking at the phone number that could change everything. Tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow I'll call. Tonight, I need to read the rest of these letters. I need to know who we were before I can understand who we might become. As I headed back upstairs, leaving him with his memories and possibilities, I heard him whisper, I remember you now, Timothy, and I'm going to bring you home. The phone rang 6 times before someone answered. James had rehearsed this moment countless times over breakfast, but when a voice that could have been his own said, hello, he froze. I squeezed his hand under the kitchen table as Emma watched with wide eyes, her cereal forgotten. Hello, the voice repeated. Who's calling? Timothy. James's voice cracked. This is James, your brother. The silence that followed seemed endless. Then, I've been waiting for this call for 43 years. What happened next unfolded like a dream. Timothy lived just 3 hours away in Hartford, Connecticut. He was married with 2 teenage sons. He'd spent years searching for us, hiring private investigators who always hit dead ends against our mother's careful walls of silence. Can we meet? James asked, his voice steadier now. Today, if possible. I have so much to tell you, to show you. I'll clear my schedule, Timothy replied without hesitation. Text me where. We chose a small cafe halfway between our homes. The 3-hour drive felt like 3 years, with Emma asking every 5 minutes if we were there yet, and James gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. What if he hates us? James whispered as we pulled into the parking lot. What if he blames us for everything? Daddy, Emma said from the back seat, you can't hate someone you've been looking for your whole life. The cafe was busy with Sunday brunch crowds, but we spotted him immediately. How could we not? He was James's mirror image, right down to the way he nervously adjusted his collar. The only difference was the slight gray at his temples instead of James's receding hairline. He stood when he saw us, emotion making him unsteady. 2 teenage boys beside him, both looking so much like James at that age, stood too, watching with curious eyes. James, Timothy breathed, and then they were hugging, 43 years of separation dissolving in an instant. Both men were crying, holding each other like they were afraid the other might disappear again. "These are my sons," Timothy said when they finally pulled apart. "Michael and Daniel. Boys, this is your Uncle James, Aunt Sarah, and your cousin Emma." Emma, never shy, marched right up to the teenagers. "Did you know your daddy was given away when he was little? But we found him now, so you have two families, just like Tommy in my class." Her innocence broke the tension. Everyone laughed, and suddenly we were just a family having brunch, albeit one with an extraordinary story to tell. Over pancakes and coffee, Timothy shared his side of the story. His adoptive parents had told him he was adopted but never mentioned a twin. He'd always felt incomplete, haunted by dreams of someone just like him. When he finally learned the truth through his adoption records, he spent years searching. "Mom told me on her deathbed about the day you came looking for us," James said, pulling out the leather satchel. "She kept every letter your adoptive parents sent to our grandmother, every photo, every update about your life. She thought she was protecting me by keeping the secret, but she was protecting herself," Timothy finished, "from her guilt, from her mother's choices, from everything she couldn't control." James spread the letters on the table, careful to avoid the syrup puddles from Emma's pancakes. "I want you to have these. They're your history too." Timothy picked up a photo of them as toddlers. "I have the other copy of this picture. My adoptive mom found it in my original paperwork. I used to stare at it for hours, wondering about the other little boy who had my face." As the adults talked, Emma had moved to sit between her new cousins, teaching them some complicated clapping game. The boys, despite being teenagers, played along with surprising enthusiasm. "Look at them," Timothy said softly. "Blood really is thicker than water." "No," James replied, watching Emma laugh with her cousins. "Love is thicker than blood. Blood just gave us a map to find each other." We stayed at that cafe for hours, sharing stories, comparing lives, discovering all the strange coincidences that linked them even across decades of separation. Both had become architects. Both had broken their left arms at age 12. Both named their dogs Max without knowing about the other. As the sun began to set, Timothy's wife arrived, having driven down to join us after her hospital shift. She took one look at the two identical men and burst into tears, hugging James like she'd known him forever. "Next weekend," she insisted, "you're all coming to our house. I want to hear every story, see every picture, know everything." "Everything might take a lifetime," James said. Timothy smiled, wrapping an arm around his brother's shoulders. "Good thing we've got the rest of our lives to catch up." As we drove home at night, Emma sleeping in the backseat clutching a photo of her dad and uncle as babies, James seemed lighter somehow, complete in a way I'd never seen before. "You know what's funny?" he said softly. "All those years, Mom thought she was protecting me by keeping Timothy a secret. But Emma's the one who showed us that sometimes the things we try to hide are exactly what we need to heal." I looked back at our sleeping daughter, this precious child who had unlocked a family's worth of healing with her simple curiosity and open heart. "Out of the mouths of babes," I quoted. "Out of the attics of grandmothers," James corrected with a smile. "And into the hearts of families." The leather satchel sat empty on the seat between us, its secrets now spread between two homes, two families, two brothers who would never be separated again. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in dusty leather and forgotten letters, waiting for the right moment and the right curious 6-year-old to bring them into the light.